There we go. Someone said I have no audio. I always get clicked with that. Okay, let's start again. Hi everyone, I'm Will Brown, one of the WordPress Sydney Meetup organisers, and welcome again to the WordPress Sydney online meetup for May 2021. Tonight's topic is the core Web Vitals from Google. And unless you've been sitting under a rock for the last couple of months, you should know what that is, but don't worry if you don't know what it is. I'm going to explain it all tonight in a really simple way. So if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you click that subscribe button and ding that bell to get the notification when we go on live. And if you're on Facebook, give us a big thumbs up. Thanks very much for Anthony for telling me that I had no audio. Thanks very much. If you're joining us online tonight, drop us a line in the comments. Let us know who you are and where you are dropping in from. We had a couple of early people. We had Steph drop in around about 5:30. He's been waiting there patiently. Thanks, Steph, and Anthony as well. He joined pretty early, and so did Tim. So thanks very much for joining us. We've got Jean as well online, Mr. Meowpuss, some of our regular viewers. Who else? Morris. Morris is online tonight. And that's great. Anthony said he was under a rock, clearly, which is, that's fine, that's fine. If you don't know what it is, I'm going to explain it all tonight in simple terms. So that would be great. Paul's online as well. Hi, Paul, and hi, Joey J from Singapore. These are some of our regular viewers for the WordPress Sydney Meetup and for the WP Quickies as well. So let's have a look at the agenda for tonight. Let's make that a little bit bigger for you. There we go. Oops, I'll get rid of Dewey. There we go. And right, so 6 p.m. we start, 7:30-ish. We're going to end tonight. We'll do a little bit of a welcome, some news, the main presentation, and Q&A. Now, if you want to ask some questions throughout the talk, then you can just drop them in the comments. Use the hashtag #ask at the beginning. That'd be great. It just makes it a lot easier for me to be able to spot the questions as I'm scrolling up and down. Please make sure that you read our code of conduct as well. It's very important for us that everyone is safe and friendly and it's all inclusive. So it basically just says, don't be a jerk online. But you can have a look at that through in your own time. We've got Lane from Hong Kong, is it? Oh, Lane Hong, join us. Where else? Who else we got? That's me. So I've just dropped that code of conduct in the comments there. You can read that. We want to thank some of our sponsors as well. So we don't have any physical meetups at the moment. We're actually talking to our venue to try and get back this year, but we're not quite sure when that will happen or if it'll happen this year. But we do want to thank our sponsors. They're still with us. You know, they do provide us with help and support and all those lovely things as well. So we want to thanks to Kinetics, to WP Engine, to Pless, to the WordPress community support, and to the Microsoft Reactor as well. So give those guys a big round of applause and go and visit their websites and just see exactly what stuff that they provide the WordPress community with. John is online from Caves Beach. Thanks very much, John, for joining us this evening. As always, I am looking for help for this meetup group. So I'm looking for another organizer or a couple of organizers to step up. Just to build a team up so we can keep delivering these high quality meetups for WordPress Sydney. Now, I've outlined the main tasks and commitments on the slide here. There's not a lot of stuff to do. We'll be continuing online meetings for the time being until the venue feels it's safe for us to return. Now, if you are interested in becoming an organizer, and if you can do those commitments and those tasks, there's a form there in the comment I've just sent. You can fill out that and I'll get back to you on that. So there's not a lot of stuff to do. Social posting, comment moderation responses, curate questions as well for the online meetup. So just a little bit of help will be great if that's something you think you want to do. So let's jump into some of the news for May 2021. Now, there was a lively debate at the beginning of this month regarding WordCamp and meetup sponsors and whether or not they could be allowed to sponsor or to speak if they had engaged in what they called competitive marketing against WordPress. Now, of course, a lot of people asked what competitive marketing meant in the context of the question, and there was a lot of good debate and some quite heated arguments as well. Now, you can read the full discussion I'll post a link in there, and what I'll do is I'll post all the links as well at the end of this broadcast. I'll put them on the meetup page, and I'll put them underneath the videos there in the description, so you've got that. But have a read through that document. It's quite interesting about the whole, if somebody's advertising or marketing against WordPress, should they be allowed to talk or sponsor at WordCamps and meetups. There was also a discussion as well in the WordPress community team considering whether or not to add vaccination status to the meetup safety checkup list, and whether or not that was actually legal to ask if someone has been vaccinated. So it's kind of left as a discussion to be continued at another time. I think the consensus was it's not really legal to ask somebody if they have been, or to provide proof if they've been vaccinated. So it's just going to be like an in faith thing at the moment. But keep checking. If you're a meetup organizer, WordCamp community, they'll probably get back to you on that if that changes. WordSesh as well. WordSession is an online WordPress conference. It's a 3-day conference. It's totally free. So you can register at wordsesh.com, and I'll drop the link in the comments there. It starts tomorrow, or actually it starts tonight, I think. So later on tonight if you're here in Australia. But it's May the 25th to 28th. It's Eastern Standard Time, so it's a US-based thing. Register for free. Have a look through the schedule. There's some really cool talks in there. There's some developer stuff. There's some beginner stuff. There's some SEO stuff. So there's a mix of stuff there for everyone. So have a look and get access to that. I'm sure they'll do replays as well for a while. And if you haven't upgraded yet, please upgrade your WordPress to 5.7.2. 5.7.2 is a security patch. There was a problem in the PHP mailer script that PHP uses. So that's been fixed in 5.7.2. So it's important to update your websites. It's not going to affect anything too much because it's a patch. So it's not like a major version. So you should be pretty safe to upgrade that. But as always, make sure that you upgrade first on a staging or development server, just to make sure everything is okay. And just a reminder, if you want to ask questions, use the hashtag ask, and that would just help me scroll through all the comments. So let's get stuck in to the main talk, which is probably what you're here for anyway. So Google Core Web Vitals Explained. Now, everyone knows that one of the significant ranking factors for Google search results is speed. But how fast is good and how slow is bad? Until recently, nobody really knew. Some people seem focused on achieving the perfect score from services like GTmetrix and Pingdom tools and Page Speed Insights. However, those proprietary scores, or grades as they're called, are based on educated guesses because nobody really knew exactly what parameters the Google search algorithm used until now. Now, Google has come up with a set of metrics called Core Web Vitals, or just Web Vitals for short, that web admins can now use as a guide of measuring actual metrics, how fast and how well the website interacts with a user. Now, it's not all about page speed, it's about page interaction as well. So they're going to be introducing these Core Web Vital metrics as a ranking signal in the search engine algorithm sometime in June. It was meant to be this month, but they've delayed it to allow people to address low scores and to make tweaks to their websites. So this guide is going to walk you through these new metrics. Now, this is pretty big because up until now, Google have not said anything about the algorithm. So it's a secret sauce, like the McDonald's secret sauce. Nobody knows exactly what's in there. They've hinted at what is important in a general category, but nobody has known exact metrics until now. This new thing, this Core Web Vitals, has got exact metrics, which is fantastic for web admins. So let's have a quick look at what the Core Web Vitals mean. So they are a set of performance metrics that can analyze the performance of your website to deliver the best interaction for visitors. So interaction, yes, speedy, which is good, but also other metrics as well. And we'll see those as we go through the Core Web Vitals. Now, you can think of these Web Vitals as a set of scores that's going to be part of a new performance experience ranking signal that directly measures how visitors experience with a website. So think about speed. think about responsiveness, and think about visual stability as well. Now, the new signals, they work alongside existing ones, being mobile friendly, safe browsing, HTTPS, and something called no intrusive interstitials. That's a big word there. It basically means it's a fancy word for pop-up ads that annoy the heck out of everyone. So the core web values, they're going to work alongside the existing signals. We don't know exactly what weight they're going to give the core web vitals as compared with other signals. But Google has said that content is always king. So that's a strong indication that that's going to be like one of the major ranking signals. But they have said that if you have 2 or 3 similar web pages, and for all the other stuff like mobile friendly, safe browsing, HTTP, if all that's the same, then the fallback is going to be these core web vitals. So if you've got competitors out there, if you're doing something similar with other websites, then these core web vitals are going to be that little tipping point that's maybe going to push you up or make you fall down in the rankings. So they are going to be an important thing to look after on your website. Okay, so why are the core web vitals so important? Because Google gods have told us so. So starting in June 2021, Google's going to be introducing this new page experience, or also known as Web Vitals, as a direct ranking signal. So it's going to be their secret sauce algorithm. It's going to be a part of that. And there's a quote from Google Search Central. They say, today we're building on this work and improving an early look at upcoming search rank change that incorporates these pages' experience and metrics. And it says, we will introduce a new signal that combines core web vitals, and that's the name that they gave to it, so that's the name that's sticking, with our existing signals for page experience. Basically for a user's experience on a page. And they go to it to say, like, while all the components of the page are important, they're going to prioritize pages with the best information, so there's the content coming out, even if some aspects of the experience are subpar. So it's still content-led for that, but a good page experience doesn't override having great, relevant content. So if they've got a fantastic page experience and you've got really crappy content, then you're going to lose rankings. So they've pretty much said that content is still the king signal, but once that's done, if you've got similar pages, it's going to fall back on these core web vitals. So they are still very, very important. So let's have a look at them right now. So this is a little graphic that's been going about, and this graphic has been taken from the Google Search Central, and a lot of people have adopted this little graphic. Basically, there are 3 metrics in Web Vitals related to speed, responsiveness, and visual stability. And each Web Vital has 3 outcomes. They can either be good, they can be needs improvement, and they can be poor. So let's have a quick look at each one individually. So this one here is called LCP, or largest contentful paint. It's a bit of a mouthful, but there it is. So people are just calling it LCP for short. What this is, measures how fast a web page loads from 0 to fully rendered. And by fully rendered, we mean like everything has been loaded in, all the assets, all the CSS, the JavaScript, all the images, all that's been loaded in, and there's nothing else for the web browser to do. So that's the story for that, from 0 to hero. Now, what webmasters can do is, if they want to try and improve your LCP, is they can do things like decreasing image file sizes, so making the page smaller, and you can use things like compression plugins, and you can look at ratios as well. So are you serving 5,000 by 3,000 images in your little thumbnail on your blog archive? Hopefully not, but have a look at those and just make sure you're serving the right ratios and the right page templates for those. Using more modern image formats like Webp. Now, I spent the last, I did a WP Quickies on Webp format, and I spent the last couple of months kind of moving all my sites over to Webp, which has been fantastic. I'm getting probably about 20–30% reduction in sizes, even more for Webp images over JPEG and PNG. So you can come down from, say, 300 kilobytes down to maybe 30 or 40 kilobytes, and multiply that by by 10 for a page overall, and you've got a really great saving. And the less stuff you're downloading, then the quicker the page is loading. Using lazy loading, so you can increase your speed, or increase the speed, how fast it downloads by using lazy loading, which is great. Now that's actually in WordPress core just now, so you don't have to do anything for that at all. Another thing you can do, and this is very, very common for WordPress websites, is to remove unnecessary scripts, things like CSS and JavaScript, and we'll look at that a little bit later on. Other things you can do to improve your LCP is using better web hosting company. Now this goes to something called the time to first byte. And if you use something like GTmetrix, you'll see it has a little slide, and you'll be able to see exactly when it starts painting stuff onto the web browser. And the bit before then, the very first bit, is when the browser asks the web server for something, and then the web server responds with an acknowledgement. That's called time to first byte. And if you've got a really rubbish web host, or if you're on like a shared hosting plan with 1,000 other websites that are competing for resources, then that time to first byte is going to be really, really slow. So using a better web hosting company can increase the speed of your website, and therefore the metric on this largest contentful paint will decrease. And the last one is removing large page elements. So things like if you've got an embedded video on one of your pages, you might consider replacing that with an image thumb that then has a link out to either the raw image on it in its service like YouTube, or a separate page where it plays it in there. Because if you're using like something like an embedded player, like an embedded YouTube player, you've got the JavaScript for the player file, you've got the CSS for the styling, you've got all these other assets that download as well. So if you've got like large assets on your page, then just think about how you can maybe get around those and decrease them a little bit, just to increase that page. So Google says that under 2.5 seconds is good for LCP, and over 4 seconds is poor, and anything in between needs some improvement. So those are the exact metrics that you're looking for when you run your website through the analyzer for this LCP, and that's the first part of the Google Web Vitals. The next part is called First Input Delay, or FID. Now, basically, this is the time it takes a page to be usable by a user. And that means that they're able to click on a link or a button, and they're able to scroll up and down, or they're able to type something into an input field. Now, website owners, if you're looking to improve on this metric here, you can use things like browser caching. Browser caching is where you as a website owner, tell the browser what assets to store locally, like images or font files or CSS. And that means that the next time the person looks at that same page or has that same asset, it loads it instantly from the browser and doesn't request it from the web host. So that's going to increase the speed for that. So browser caching can really increase that speed. Again, removing unnecessary scripts, and we'll cover that a little bit later. And minimizing or deferring JavaScript. Now, when the web browser loads in JavaScript and CSS files, it can put a stop on loading in the rest of the assets for the page. So what we can do is we can get plugins, or we can use some code to defer that JavaScript to the end of the page, which means hopefully that things that allow you to interact with the page, like scrolling, like links, like buttons, are rendered before that JavaScript is loaded, and that is going to increase or will decrease this FID metric. It's going to get you a better metric. Now, Google says that under 100 milliseconds is good, and over 300 milliseconds is poor. Now, that's a pretty small window. We've only got a 200 millisecond difference in there. So even deferring 1 or 2 scripts or using a little bit of browser caching, that can really improve that score quite a bit. So there we are. FID, first input delay, is when the web page is usable by a user. So the third one and the last one in this Google Core Web Vital metrics is something called CLS, or cumulative layout shift. They really like the big words in Google. So this one here is about the stability of the page layout. Now, I've been there, I've looked at a website before, and it's starting to load in, and you start to read it, and you might see a button that you want to click, and you go and click on that button, but hey, it's moved. It's jumped down the page, and you've now clicked on an ad. You've got like 1,000 pop-up. You're like, no. So that this metric directly it looks at that by the stability of the format of the web page. So ideally, when a web page is loaded in, the framework for the web page has all the size attributes for the divs and for the areas where everything is going to load into, which means that the web page doesn't move at all, rather than you'll jump around when something big loads into the top. And this is what this CLS is all about. So website owners, if you're looking to improve on your CLS, you can use things like make sure you use proper size attributes for all media. So make sure that there's a size for your pictures, your images. Make sure there's a width and a height for your video containers as well. So anything that's going to be loaded in, like adverts, make sure that you define that size in the CSS, in the core CSS. So when that first loads in, that space is defined in the actual browser layout, and it doesn't change afterwards. Adding new elements below the fold as well. So obviously, when a web page loads in, you've only really got access to the above the fold part of the web page. And if that becomes interactive first, then that's the start or the stop of that CLS interaction. You can now click on links on that. Which means if you defer everything to load after or below the fold, then again, you're going to help to improve your CLS, because the page is going to be interactive at the top, even though it's loading stuff in at the bottom, but that's still going to count for this CLS metrics. And again, yes, making sure that your adverts have a set reserved space. Now that's quite important, because a lot of customers, a lot of my clients have ad banners at the very top of the page, because that's a premium real estate. And if that loads in, if it's not being set, it's not being well defined, that's going to push all the content back down, and that's going to mean that your CLS is going to be more into that kind of poor area. So Google says that this is their metric, so it's not in seconds or anything, that's their metric of measuring. It says that under 0.1 is good, and over 0.25 is poor. Now, we're not too sure exactly what that means as far as the measurement of the metric, but those are the metrics that they are using, and that's the one that's going to come up when you analyze your website. So that's the 3 core web values, and that's some tips on how to improve them, and more precise, those are the exact metrics that Google are going to be measuring them against everyone's websites. Now, these metrics, they are not set in stone forever, and they are expected to change as technology and the internet evolves. So keep checking back every little while to make sure that those metrics are still the same. Okay, so those were the metrics, but you've also got a question is where can you measure your core web vitals from? And Google has made 3 different resources available to directly measure these web vitals. The first one is Chrome User Experience Report. The next one is Page Speed Insights. Then we've got Google Search Console. And if you want to use external ones, then there's GT Metrics as well. And let's have a look at some of these in a little bit more detail. Now, if you haven't heard of Google Chrome Experience Report, and I hadn't heard of that until I did some research for this talk tonight, it basically allows web users to get access to their website's historical performance, like over a few weeks, we talk about 4 weeks, without having to run analytics or reports on the live website. So what that means is if you have a pretty sensitive website, you don't want to muck up your visitations, you don't want to put a load on the website, then you can use this service here to access the data that Google has collected, because Google doesn't collect anything at all, really. But all the data that Google collects is on your website. You can then query that and bring it back as like historical data without having to run any analytics on the front end of the website. Now, it sounds fantastic, but access to that is rather convoluted. It's probably great if you're a developer, but it requires you to create a Google Cloud project and then to query the data, like you query a database. And I'm pretty sure that's beyond the ability of most website owners who don't have development or analytical skills. Now, you're obviously welcome to have a look, and I'll drop some links in afterwards. Have a look and see if that's something that you might want to use. If you're like maybe an enterprise user, or you've got a pretty sensitive website, you can certainly get the data out of there without having to hammer your website and query it all the time. The next one is page speed insights. So this has two sets of data for both mobile and for desktop views. Now, field data, which is at the top, and you can see here is one of the ones that I ran for my 0-point development website. It wasn't 88 beginning of last week, I can tell you that. It was right down there. But the field data at the very top, it allows you to measure the URL scores as an average over 28 days. So again, this is data that Google has stored, and it's averaging that data out over 28 days. Okay. Now, just underneath that, you have something called lab data. And this lab data section, it runs the real-time scores for the URL that you queried for that. So this is page speed insights, if you're wondering. Now remember to run the reports on both mobile and desktop as well for those. But this is great, this lab data section. It gives you suggestions on how to improve overall performance. So I've kind of run out of screen real estate there, but you can just see at the very bottom, you start to get the list of what they call opportunities or suggestions on how to increase your scores for the Google Core Web Vitals. So there was a whole heap under this, and obviously they're labeled in a traffic light system, with red being the ones that are poor that you should probably try first, orange being the ones that you can improve on, and green are the ones that are currently good. Now, I've been working on my desktop site first because I get about 80% of all my views through my desktop browsers. But my mobile performance needs a lot of work, so that's my next focus. And here it is. It's a lowly 24. So yeah, it needs a lot of work for that. And so that's my job over the next few weeks, is to get that mobile score and page insights in Google Core Web Vitals all the way up into the green, as it is almost in my desktop version. Okay, so the third way to have a look at these Core Web Vitals for your website is through the Google Search Console. And I'm sure all of you web admins have linked your Google Analytics and your Google Search Console. If you haven't, it's probably best to do that right now. But go into Google Search Console, make sure you have the website selected that you want the Core Web Vitals report for, and then you navigate down to Experience and then Core Web Vitals. And what you're going to see is you're going to see a report summary. One for mobile, which is this one here, and then the next one is for desktop. Now you can click on the open report, and you're going to see a more detailed report. And again, it's got the traffic light system. It's got red for poor, it's got orange for needs improvement, and green for okay. And it basically tells you how many web pages have been marked under those three statuses. And the report even gives you URL examples of pages that need their performance improved. So it's a great tool. Go in there and you can get the exact URLs that Google is saying that you need some work on, or this one is really, really poor. And that allows you to concentrate your effort on the poor ones first, so that it's not dragging your overall website down. So do all the poor ones, make sure you get those up into orange or green, and then you can go back and work on the needs work, those orange ones, and get them back up as far as you can, up high scores or into green if possible. So that's the three Google resources that you can go in and find your Core Web Vitals for your website. However, if you want to use an external service, there's many. There's Pingdom Tools. I can't remember some other ones, but GTmetrix is my go-to for speed tests. So they now have a Google Core Web Vitals as part of the report. You can see that the arrow linked in there. So it's right on the right-hand side next to their GTmetrix grading system, which again, their grading system is their own internal metrics. But now we've got actual metrics from Google. They've introduced those Web Vitals there for you to have a look at. You can see here, so the time for first bite, TTFB. So that's the very first, that's kind of the dark blue first box down right at the very bottom on the left-hand side. So that's the time to first bite. So that's what I was talking about. And then you can start to see that it's got different, I know I can't make that much bigger, sorry about that. But the light blue is the first contentful paint. And then you've got your LCP. So it's linking all the different stages for the Web Vitals so you can actually visually see where they occur in the timeline as it's going along. So I think that's fantastic. I love the page speed insights from Google. I love the Google Search Console, how it gives you all the URL links to the ones that are poor, and I think that's a great visual. But GT Metrics is still my kind of go-to for everything else as well. So not only is it Web Vitals, it's also all the other interactive bits of your website. So I always think that's a fantastic tool. Okay, so we have looked at core Web Vitals. We've looked at how to get at them, how to actually see them and score them in your website. So let's have a quick look at how you can improve some of those vital scores. So I've listed a few of the top ideas that I've used over the past couple of months to get my core Web Vitals from the 20s, the very, very poor and shameful 20s that my desktop was in, all the way up to 87, I think it was. And keep going as well. I've got more work to do. So the first one here is image optimization. Now, WordPress, as I said, has lazy loading built into core, which is fantastic. So you don't need to worry about implementing that one. But you can get a huge performance boost. And this was my biggest performance boost. If you compress your existing images using high or medium compression and removing image metadata like EXIF, things like that. So even if you just do that, so forget about Webp just now, just run compression on all your images, and you're going to get a huge increase in that LCP vital. I think mine jumped up from 23 or 24 all the way up to like 40 something, just by compressing all my featured images. So I hadn't even worked on thumbnails. So if you're looking for a real quick hit, definitely image optimization is your first, would be my suggestion, the first thing to do. Now you can use things like lots and lots of plugins out there. My go-to plugin at the moment is this one. It's called Short Pixel. Short Pixel Image Optimizer, and it allows you to compress JPEG, PNG, and GIF files as well. But JPEG and PNG are the two most popular ones. I set mine to medium, and I visually can't see any major difference between what it was with super high and the medium. If you do see some differences, you can of course go in and just change that particular image. But overall, all my images, all my featured images, all my thousands of blog posts, I've only had to do that a handful of times where you can see a little bit of pixelation. But by compressing everything in medium, I'm squashing these images way, way, way down, and the file sizes are like kilobytes as opposed to hundreds of kilobytes that they were before that. So the free version of Short Pixel, you get 100 free credits per month. So you've got to sign up with them. You've got to register with their website, and you get these 100 free credits, which is 100 images to compress every month. But what I did, because I've got a little bit more than 100 images, I bought a one-time credit. So a one-time 10,000 credits for about $10 US, which is pretty much peanuts for improving your Web Vital scores by a lot, just for this one thing. So I bought the 10,000 credits, I left it running for a couple of hours, and it did a few thousand of my featured images, which was good, and all the pages as well. So it compressed them all, and Short Pixel is really, really good for doing that. What I also did as well, this Short Pixel plugin, it has the option to copy your PNG and JPEGs as WebPs, and that's what I did. It generated a WebP which actually used one extra credit. So it compressed using one credit and then created a copy using one credit, which is why I bought the 10,000 credits for pretty much peanuts. But it creates these WebP images, it puts them in a separate folder, and then uses a little bit of JavaScript to replace the JPEG, the PNG, or GIF files with the WebP. So it's doing a little bit of magic in the background from there. It works really, really well. So my website now serves pretty much WebP for everything, maybe except for thumbnails. I've not went down to the small thumbnails yet, but certainly for featured images, for your blog archive, all of that is in WebP now, and I've got huge savings on page speed. Here we go. So it works really, really well. Just a note that if you have a page template, like a single page, which uses a JPEG or a PNG as a background for a div element, so we're talking about the CSS background tag there. You're going to also need to install the Short Pixel Adaptive Images plugin. I've got a lot of big words in this tonight, and there's a link in the comments there. And what that does is it looks through your CSS files, and if it finds a background URL, so it's in the CSS background URL, then it replaces that with the Webp as well. So I've got that installed, a little bit of configuration, and that works really well for that. So I've got that running my website. As I say, I've got a huge performance increase, so I'm really happy with that plugin and the way it's working. Long term, as of, well, from my post I'm publishing just now, I'm using exclusive Webp. So I do all my stuff in Photoshop, and I've got a Webp extension for that. So I can save all that stuff natively now as just Webp, and that just upload that. So which means the plugins don't have to do as much work from now onwards for all my future posts. Now, if you don't really know what Webp is, I did a quickies on this a couple of months ago. I've dropped the link there in the comments so you can watch that, and it describes what Webp is, the compression ratios, and a little bit more of Webp and a little bit more detail for that. So you can certainly have a look through that and just to kind of bring yourself up to speed on Webp images. Okay, the next tip on how to improve your core web vitals is remove unused scripts. Now, lots of WordPress plugins and themes, they're going to load JavaScript and they're going to load CSS files globally on every page, regardless if they're actually needed or not. So this one here can be a little bit more difficult to implement because sometimes it requires a little bit of development, a little bit of code, but there are a couple of plugins out there that kind of help do this. So if you've got a lot of plugins on your website, have a look in the source code. And just see how much CSS and JavaScript files are being used. And also, if you're running the Core Web Vitals reports in Google Search Console or Page Speed Insights, it's going to tell you down below in the hints and tips files that are not particularly being used on that page. So you can really target those. Now, the best plugin I found to deal with this, excuse me, if you're not a developer, is called the Asset Cleanup plugin. Now the interface could do with a little bit of work, but it does it really well. It's a free plugin as well. It does have a pro version, but I'm just using the free version on my website at the moment. What it does is it allows you to disable scripts on a per page basis, and again the pro version gives you a little bit more control. So for example, let's say we're targeting the home page, and you've got a whole load of plugins that put CSS and JavaScript into the source code. You can go into your homepage, and at the bottom of the homepage, it lists all the plugins that you can find with that page and all the script files that's associated with it. And you can just go down the list and say, I don't need that CSS file, I don't need that JavaScript file, I don't need that JavaScript file. And by squashing that down, you can really save space on that particular web page. So that's what I've done on my homepage. I had probably about 20 JavaScript files that the homepage was loading in and that I wasn't actually using on that particular homepage. So I've went through, I've just removed those. I've also found that there was some global scripts that were being used just for things like e-commerce that weren't being used on my blog post pages. So this plugin allowed me to go in and say for post type post, never load this particular JavaScript file. And I got rid of those as well. So when people are browsing my posts now, it's not loading in all these JavaScript files that are required when people are buying things from my website on a page, but not on a post when I'm just when they're just browsing for blogs. So this little plugin is absolutely fantastic. I got that on my website at the moment, and it's running really well. And yeah, I would highly recommend just playing around with that on a staging server to see if you can get your Core Web Vital scores improving. Next one is fonts. So let's limit your number of fonts on your website. So really, I guess what I did was I did a bit of an audit on my website. I had a look at the homepage, the blog archive, the actual single pages as well, the shop, all that sort of stuff. And I had a look at the number of fonts I was currently using on my website. And I was actually using 4 web fonts. But do you know how many I was actually loading in? 10. 10 web fonts. So just by doing a quick audit of my templates, I found that I wasn't using these fonts, or maybe I was using one on one page. So I've consolidated all those down into my core Google fonts. And that's something that I really urge you to do as well, because Google fonts, although they look lovely, they are rather large in size, especially when we start adding things like bold, light, semi-bold, bold and italic, strong, extra strong, all those sort of things that adds to the JavaScript files that's downloaded. So I stripped all that out. I got rid of italics, so I'm only really using regular and bold now for my fonts, and I stripped it down to just 4 fonts for those. So make sure they're all required, the fonts on your website. Another tip is you could download your font files locally. So if you're using things like Google Fonts, you can always use their CDN, which downloads the JavaScript and CSS, but you can also download the actual raw font files, the WOFs and the TFFs and all those sort of things, onto your local web server, and then use browser caching, like tell the browser to cache those files. And again, you're going to get that speed improvement, because it's not going to be downloading it again from the web server. It's going to be serving it locally from the browser cache. As well, you can use things like load locate, things like prefetch as well. Prefetch is when you tell the browser to go and fetch something that you know that web page is going to need it before the main content is loaded in. So if you want some more information about locally loading fonts and prefetch and DNS prefetch and all that sort of stuff, I'm not going to cover tonight. It's a bit more technical. There's a link there in the comments to a Smashing Magazine article all about optimizing Google Fonts. But even if you don't use Google Fonts, it's still relevant if you're using some of the other font services. So I think this is the last one. Yeah, so last tip, how to improve your core Web Vital scores is to use browser caching. I've talked about that a little bit before, about the browser caches stuff locally, and then when you browse that same page or a similar asset, then the web browser itself, your local PC, gives you that asset back, and that means you're not having to download it from the web server, and you're saving all that that time and speed. Now, if you have enabled browser caching, then all your files, let's say, they're going to be loaded from your local PC instead of the server, and that's what we really want. That's going to really speed up each web page in your website. Now, the little banner there is from a plugin called Leverage Browser Caching, and I've had this one installed in my WordPress websites, and it's working really, really well just now. So give that a go. It's got a few settings and allows you to tweak stuff. It tweaks you how what assets the browser is going to cache and for how long as well. Don't go crazy. Don't go caching everything for like 10 years or anything like that. Give it a little bit of a sensible thing, because if something does change or update, then your browser is not gonna release those if you're going to set these caching limits really, really high. So setting something sensible. The plugin has some default options in there. But really good. So all these plugins, like the asset cleaner, the browser caching, the image optimization, those are kind of the big things that made a huge difference to get my core Web Vital pages down from the 20s all the way up to like almost the 90s for those. And I hope it's going to help you guys as well in getting your core Web Vitals up for your websites. Better get started soon, because we don't know exactly when these core Web Vitals are going to drop. But they just said it's going to be sometime in June. So that's my explanation of the new Google Web Core Vitals. I bet all you guys are going to be running page speed insight tests over the next few weeks, and working on your mobile and desktop versions as well to make sure you get those values all the way up. So thanks so much for being with me. That was a big one, and there's a lot of talk in there. Drop some questions down, and I'll see if I can answer them in the comments. Okay, we have a question from Anthony. Should we only focus on the landing page, home page, or all pages? That is a great question, Anthony. Actually, you should focus on all pages for that, because if you have a look back at the page speed insights, the very first part of it, all those little scores, let me see if I can go back the slides. I'll show you which one I am using. This one here. Make that big for you. I'll take away the comment. So this very first part here, which is the field data, that is an average of all the pages on your website. And that's what the core web values is going to be using overall. So it's going to be using like an overall as like a basis, as like a fallback. So this is an aggregate of all your pages over a 28-day period that Google has collected. So yes, of course, it's going to use individual URLs as well, but on an average, it's going to use that as a fallback as well for that. So you need to really be concentrating on not just your landing pages and homepage, but also your template pages, like if you've got like a blog page or your single page templates as well. If you've got like hundreds and thousands of pages, then that's gonna weigh more as an average than maybe just a half a dozen landing pages and your homepage for that. So yeah, great question. I would probably start, Anthony. I'd probably start on your homepage and landing pages, because that will give you an idea. Certainly, if you're going to be doing kind of these kind of broad measures like image optimization and stuff, moving over to Webp, practicing on your homepage and your landing page will probably put you in good stead for then going further optimization into your single page, your single post page, your blog archives, and all that sort of stuff. Your product pages as well, if you've got WooCommerce installed. Your product post type, your checkout, and all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, great question. Yeah, all pages, really, all page templates rather. Morris asks, is there a way to do a page speed or vitals check on an individual page? Yes, yep. So you just put individual page URL in. You can put that into GTmetrix or the page speed insights as well, and it's going to give you the exact link. So this one here was for my home page, but if you put the URL for a single page, then it's going to give you that metrics for that single page, and that's probably what I would suggest you do. So find a product page that's got heaps of images, probably your busiest product page if you've got WooCommerce. Run that through Page Speed Insights, run that through GTmetrix, and that's going to give you the worst case scenario. And then that will allow you to put together a process to be able to increase that value. And if you apply that to the template, then all your subsequent page templates, they're going to increase as well with that. So if you concentrate on that particular page template. So I do that for products. I do that for pages. So look at your page layout. If you're using something like Beaver Builder or Elementor, have a look at the elements you're using in there, like featured image or background images, and get that sorted for that particular page type. Posts as well, I go for your single blog post. So find out a single post that's got heaps of images, that's got stuff that's embedded, that's got video as well. Run that as an individual URL through GTmetrix and through Page Speed Insights, and find out all the issues that it details down below, and then just knock those off one by one. And if you can get the score of your worst performing page templates up, then that's going to ripple on and affect all your other page templates. So yes, individual pages you can certainly check. Great question, Morris. Jane asks, are tests running from a local Google server in Oz or from overseas? That's a good question, actually. Jane, I don't know. So when you run the Google Search console, or if you run the Page Speed Insights, as far as I'm aware, there's no locality that you can set. I could be wrong, I could have missed it, but I couldn't see anywhere where you could set that particular speed from. And certainly from the field data rather than lab data. The field data is an aggregate, so that's the data that's being sucked in from Google anyway, so that's not local. But the lab data, yeah, that's a good point. I couldn't see anything in the lab data that said anything about locality. Lab data, nope. So maybe not, but yeah, I'll have a look at that in more detail. And if I find out, then I'll drop it in the comments down below. But certainly for GTmetrix, GTmetrix allow you to specify where it's from. I think you have to create an account and log in. So I was just using the free one here just for the screenshots for this meetup tonight. But this one here, it always sets it to Canada for the free ones. But if you log in and create an account, I think you just have to create a free account, then you can change the test server location for that and set that to Australia. And that's going to give you a more specific response for your Australian audience. So yeah, good question from that, Jane. So yeah, I'll have a look at the page speed insights and see if I can find a locality. Morris asks again, I use a lot of subdomains. Do these subdomains impact the score of other subdomains or the main domain? Well, I don't know the exact question or exact answer that Google would say from that, but from my experience, I would think that subdomains would be classed as a separate entity as well, because they are classed as separate in Google Analytics. So we're talking about, for example, if you've got blog.mydomain.com or courses. Or shop.mydomain.com, that under Google Analytics is going to come in as a separate entity. So I think for these Google Core Web Vitals, I would assume that the subdomains is going to be completely separate from the main domain as well. Yeah, I would reckon that. So that's a good question, Morris. Anyone else got any questions? If not, I'm probably going to wrap up because we're hitting almost an hour now, so that's been quite a bit. Can't see anything else coming through. Okay, let's wrap this up. So we did some Q&A. Thank you very much. That's some great questions for those. It's always good to get some responses back from you guys. If you want to find out more about meetups, head over to the wpaustralia.org. Let's copy that link and drop that down in here. Yeah, visit the wpaustralia.org. We've got a couple of big buttons on the main screen. One's find a meetup. It's going to tell you about all the meetups that are in Australia. Most are still online, but we are looking to try and get back to physical meetups. And also there's a join us on Slack button as well. If you don't know what Slack is, it's like an online bulletin board community. There's lots of little groups or channels in there for things like themes, for plugin, for coding, for general, even for things like business tips as well. So if you're kind of new to the WordPress community, if you've not gone out and about because of COVID last year, head over to Slack, go into general, say hi, and just get to know the people in the community. Ask questions. There's no stupid questions at all, and we're all pretty respectful in there because again we're trying to adhere to the code of conduct. Yeah, so really do join Slack and chat to us, get to know some of us in the WordPress community here in Australia. That's me. I'm mostly on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with you guys. If you're going to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm on Developer Will. Just make sure you add a little note to your connection and tell me where you came from. I'm on Instagram as well, willbright_au, and I'm sometimes on Twitter. I like to use Twitter as a rant. So if I find something that I'm not too pleased about, I kind of go on a bit of a Twitter rant as well. Tin Dragon Kochi says, do you think there are any meetups in our region? So online is good. Oh, you don't think there are any? Yeah. So meetups are not on all regions, and most of them are still online at the moment as well. We took a really big hit during COVID. A lot of organizers stepped down. A lot of them, got out of whatever they were doing because they were made redundant or there wasn't enough work. So there's been a big kind of shift in the WordPress meetup organizer community. So check that wpaustralia.org website. We try and keep that up to date. If not, check your meetup.com and do a quick link and consider creating a new one. So for example, if there's no meetups in your region, create one. You can go on the meetup.com, create one from there, or go on WP Australia or drop it in on Slack and just ask us. We're all happy to help. If you want to spin up a new meetup group, we are more than happy to show you how to do that, to help you, to put you in touch with sponsors and things like that to help you out. So I'd really encourage you, if there isn't one in your region, just to start one up. You can do really simple topics. You don't have to go into great detail. Maybe just do a Q&A or just do a Zoom hangout for those. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Thank you for taking your time tonight. Hopefully that's set you in good standing for the Google Web Vitals coming up next month. Run your websites through those page speed insights tests, run them through GTmetrix, install those plugins as well, and try and get those scores up. In fact, it'd be really, really interesting if you can maybe copy some of your before and after speeds and paste them down below in the comments in the meetup.com, just so you can see the changes that you guys have had. That'd be really, really interesting. So if not, I shall see you next month. I don't have a topic for next month, but I'll get one sorted and send that out on Meetup. So cheerio, guys, and connect with you next month.